All right, so I can't buy another property unless I have my property sold first. But I don't want to put my house on the market until I find a property to buy. What do I do? Well, let's talk about another aspect of the California Association of Realtors contract with regards to the contingency of a buyer selling another property. There's an addendum that goes with the California Association of Realtors residential purchase agreement. It's called an RPA. So you'll hear realtors say, oh, let's get another RPA, and go, oh my gosh, what's an RPA? What's a residential purchase agreement? So the RPA has to have a COP with it. Oh my God, what's a COP? Well, that's a contingent upon sale of other property. Oh, okay. Well, is that the form that I need if I have a property to sell? Yes, that's the property. That's the form you need to add to your residential purchase agreement if you need to sell a property before you can commit to buying this one. So, what are the strategies to do when you're trying to negotiate a RPA and you need a COP with it? Well, the RPA is going to be for a time limit. And most sellers want to know if you're going to sell, if you're going to buy my property and you have to sell your property, how long is that going to take? Well, most of the time you don't know unless your property is in escrow. So let's talk about strategies for doing a contingency by the sale of your home. You can't buy the next one until it sells. My suggestion is to get your property market ready, have it on the market, negotiate a contract, and have it be subject to you finding another property. But you're not going to have a buyer, especially as we get into more of a buyer's market, sit around and wait for nothing. Just say you would like to have the option of extending maybe up to 15 to 30 days this escrow so that I can make sure that I buy another property that I like. And hopefully you already have a property that you like before you sell this one. All right, so now you have your property in escrow and now you're going to go buy another property. You don't know for sure if your escrow is going to close really until the buyer removes all of their contingencies. So with that need to have your property sell before you can buy the next property, you add the COP form, the contingent on sale of other property. And then with that, your seller on the property you want to buy knows that you have an escrow on that property because that form tells what the escrow is, the property is, and when it's supposed to close. The best strategy when using the contingent on sale of your property is that you have a date certain that you can remove all of your contingencies. So as an example, let's say a normal escrow is 30 to 60 days. If you need all those 60 days, let's say 30 days of it is going to be for the sale of other property. And at that time, you feel pretty confident that your buyer that you already have is going to go ahead and get their contingencies removed. So then you can then remove your contingencies and feel like you can close safely. Anyway, that's important that you give some indication to your seller that you're going to remove that contingency on time. And you keep them apprised of that. And sometimes you need an extension. You make sure that they know that. Now, what happens if you don't have a buyer for your property and you don't even have your property on the market? Well, I'm going to say that most sellers won't want to talk to you unless they're getting an extremely great price and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get you to buy that property. Or maybe you have a seller that it's in no hurry to close. As a matter of fact, maybe they'd like more time to close, knowing that they have something certain if your house sells. As we get more into a buyer's market and less into a seller's market, we're going to find that you're going to have more sellers willing to wait for your sale of your property, but they're not going to wait forever. And it is difficult if you're going to be a seller to get your property sold on a time frame that's predictable unless you price it right. So a good listing agent on the property that you're going to buy is going to want to know, how did you price your property? Is it competitive? They'll probably want to inspect it, and they're going to need to make sure that it is a sellable property, because otherwise a contingent upon the sale of another property is just a maybe. And most sellers don't want to tie their property up for an indefinite amount of time on a maybe. They would like to have a date specific that you're going to remove the contingencies. I recommend 30 days, maybe you make it 60 days, and then you have a 75 or 90-day escrow. But you are a much more powerful buyer if you don't have a contingency to sell your property. Your property is already sold. And some ways to do that: talk to your agent, make sure that you have some sort of negotiation that will allow you an interim that either lets you stay in the property that you're selling, or a place to move to temporarily, maybe a furnished VRBO or Airbnb, and then have your property sold so that now you are a strong buyer. Oftentimes you'll have a big down payment and you can close quickly because your loan's already pre-approved. So my advice: don't have a contingent sale upon your property. Be a buyer with no property contingency to sell, and the fewer contingencies you have, the better price you get. But if you need to have that contingency, then the COP, the contingent of the sale of other property, is the way for you to accomplish that. So talk to your agent, find out the best strategy. If you have questions that you'd like to have us answer, give us a call, and we'll be happy to answer this and any other questions you have about buying or selling real estate. Thank you very much for tuning in.